Pheladi, the ANC process, this summit that is taking place, is parallel to the hearings that we've been seeing that are, led by Parliament. This, of course, is a matter of the ANC to try and refine its position on the question of land, isn't it?
Definitely, Tula. So I've left Stellenbosch and we're back in Cape Town. The afternoon sessions were closed sessions for stakeholders to engage more intimately on questions they need clarity on. So that was the first thing I actually asked this morning when we spoke to the ANCs. Why are you doing this parallel to the parliamentary process? And they said, actually, our process is more about making sure that our stakeholders are informed and armed with as much information as possible before going ahead and making any sort of oral submission at the land hearings that are scheduled to happen in Cape Town in about 2 weeks. So I think what was interesting for me, and an interesting distinction between the two processes, is whereas MPs can only listen to people and not engage them or answer any questions posed, in some cases we've seen them jotting down the questions to answer them at a later stage. In this instance, people like Ronald Lamula, who were intimately involved with sort of drafting that resolution from the ANC conference, could answer questions that were posed quite directly to them. And one of the questions that did come up is, who will get this land? And let's quickly just listen to Ronald Lamula answering that question, rather.
That the land must be shared among those who work it. But the National Executive Committee has added and said it must also be shared among those who need it. Because there is now a bigger need of the land by those who might not have a direct claim, who have not been directly dispossessed. But because of migration to big cities in the country, the need for land has become huge.
That is indeed quite interesting, Pheladi. So it appears to me that there seems to be an attempt to marry the positions that are enshrined in the Freedom Charter, as quoted by Ronald Lamula there, but also what's been in our current constitution, but also what was said by the ANC at its conference in December about land expropriation without compensation. What were the people saying in the hearings, particularly on issues to do with agricultural land? We know about the importance of the Western Cape there, but also urban land, some of the challenges that they face.
So that's something that came up immediately in the first one or two questions that were posed back to this panel today. We know that in Cape Town, for example, there have been between 90 and 300 different land occupations and land invasions just since the beginning of this year. So urban land is a huge problem in our province. And one of the things that he was saying is, like he was saying in his bite, that in the Western Cape particularly, dispossession isn't always going to be about people who are sort of the original inhabitants of land and people who can prove that they owned this piece or that piece or the other. It's also about people who've now migrated here from other parts of the country and are as deserving of a dignified place to live. So the urban land issue, the farming issue, with farming, something we've seen a lot of in our province is evictions on farms. So that's something they're going to tackle a bit more tomorrow when we have the NGOs, some farm workers and some farm dwellers making their own presentations to give us a bit more practical insight. But farm evictions were also highlighted. Another thing was also people also questioning, if we are talking about land that was stolen, why don't we maybe consider rather making this debate about those people who currently own land proving how they got that land? So instead of making the dispossessed prove their dispossession, make the current holders prove how they got that land, and even if there is a lease or a title deed, proving how they got it, because as the gentleman was saying, he was a Khoi chief, saying that it's the proceeds of a crime, and you shouldn't, as a disenfranchised person or the victim of crime, have to prove the crime. The onus in this case should be on the person who took it away. So some very varied views, and like I was saying earlier, I enjoyed that with this process, with the summit, there was that back and forth, and people weren't just coming with charged statements and testimonies and sort of hitting a brick wall. They got a response, they got to engage with other stakeholders who maybe came in with a bit of a different viewpoint that they hadn't considered, or put in some practice practical insight onto the experiences they've had and why this can't work, why that can't work. So I think by the end of our 2-day summit, it's going to prove to be a fruitful engagement, and those people going forward into those land hearings, I think, will be much better equipped and know what the intentions are behind this entire process, a bit more than others we've seen in the past.
All right.